The Netflix series. Oh boy. The Netflix series was definitely darker. Way darker than I expected when I first saw it. I don't mind dark. I really don't mind dark. I love Batman. I love the 1980s version of Batman. I think it was 1988. 88, 89. It was either the later mid 80s. You'll probably correct me if I'm wrong. But the thing is that I love Tim Burton's version of Batman. Just like I love the second version. I think it was Batman Begins. Not Batman Begins. Batman Returns. I think what had Catwoman in it. But yeah, I enjoyed Tim Burton's two versions of Batman. I like dark, especially if it makes sense. I love the Christopher Nolan versions of Batman, so I don't mind dark if it makes sense. In this case, it was a lot more gritty and realistic. It was something that you would probably see from day to day, but I'm not gonna lie. As Matt Murdock, when he was first introduced to me, the conflict that people were saying was a conflict between his Catholic religion and his pursuit of justice. I didn't really see the religious conflict, in my opinion. It was just there to be talked about, but you just didn't see much of a conflict in him because he didn't seem that religious. Not in season 1, not in my humble opinion. But I started to hate him as time went on. I started to really hate Matt Murdock because he was just a jerk. Like, gosh, he was not loyal to anybody, not even to his own friends. I mean, who steals his best friend's wallet to get into jail and try to get some dirt on the Kingpin? He was about to literally sell his friend up the river by stealing his ID, at least in my opinion. I mean, he really didn't care. He didn't care much about Karen either. He really didn't, especially the fact that he fell in love with anything with a pair of boobs. Like, seriously, he had so big of a heart-on for Elektra even after she died, supposedly. And it was just, I don't know. Like, he kept bouncing from woman to woman to woman to woman. Like, he had no loyalty whatsoever. And it made you think. That's the reason why I honestly love the Kingpin the most. And I was supposed to hate him, but I absolutely loved him. Because he did things that made you question who Daredevil really is and who he was fighting for. Like, I'm supposed to hate this guy, especially the things he's done to other people, but you understood why he did it. That's why people love Thanos so much. Even though Thanos is a megalomaniac, and there could have been a whole different way of how he would be able to pursue saving his entire race or saving the entire universe. But then in a way you understood why he did it, even though it made sense to him but made sense to no one else. In this case with the Kingpin, I understood why he did it because of where he lived. But then when Daredevil was pursuing him, it made you wonder who the true villain really was. And that's how good of a casting Vincent D'Onofrio was as the Kingpin. I enjoyed him far more than Matt Murdock. There were times I rooted for the Kingpin. I'm like, I'm not supposed to care this much. Why am I rooting for you? But honestly, he's still by far one of my favorite villains on the Netflix series. And then going from one villain to another. Oh my gosh. Poindexter. He was insane. I have never seen a guy or a villain that off the rails mental. It was to the point where it was disturbing. Like, good night, he creeped me out. Especially his obsession with his crush that he used to work with at his previous job. How he was stalking her and just being outright creepy. And then how the Kingpin was able to manipulate that. It made me love the Kingpin more as a villain. But then it also made me hate Dex more because he was just nuts. He was just off. He was a type of dog that needed to be on a chain, and the one that was holding him back was the Kingpin. But yeah, I'm gonna get into Karen Page, as well as other characters on the show. Karen, I started to hate her because she would always get people into trouble. She would go out of her way to get into danger. And then somehow she would just, she would always get people into danger, but then she would get mad for other. I'm like, honey, it's your fault why this dude is dead. It is your fault why you're in this situation. And I started to really hate Karen a lot in season 2. But season 3, even though I understood her background, I still hated Karen. I didn't like Karen even further. Foggy's the dude. Like, he will forever be the dude, man. I was rooting for him from the very beginning. Even though at first in season 1 it made more sense for Karen and Foggy to get together. But somehow they changed into season 2 for him to go back to his old flame from college. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense, but all right, fine, you know. But anyway, but he remained consistent throughout all 3 seasons. I love Foggy. I hope they bring him back for Born Again, but we'll see from there.
The Netflix series. First, let me say, this interpretation of Daredevil is decidedly closer to the Frank Miller one. And let me say, Frank Miller's Daredevil was not dark at first. He gradually got that way over time. And it's pretty much the version that every writer has pretty much followed, but they've always put their own spin on it after that. Now, as for the Kingpin was definitely more complex in this version than he was in the movie. Or even on Trial of the Incredible Hulk, which I should have mentioned earlier, Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, even though he was not actually called the Kingpin, it was decidedly him, played by old dude from the Indiana Jones films, who was Sala. I forgot his name, but he played Sala in there. He played the Kingpin in Trial of the Incredible Hulk. And on the side note, Trial of the Incredible Hulk, in case you're wondering, yes, it's part of that universe starring the late Bill Bixby and, of course, Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk. Daredevil in that, while he does have some of Matt Murdock's darkness, he could actually crack a joke or two here and there without being campy. He could actually crack a joke here or two without being campy. But back to the Kingpin in the Netflix series, he was an extremely complex guy. He was a very complex man. Almost to the point where, on one hand, you knew he was the villain and you knew he had to be stopped. But on the other hand, you felt sorry for him. And the Netflix series had a way of making you, or Marvel in the pre-woke days, had a way of making you feel sorry for the villain. I mean, but they did it in a good way. Not in a sappy, cookie cutter way. Now, as for Karen Page, this is the first time Karen Page was really put on center stage. If you've ever seen Daredevil, the uncut version with Ben Affleck, she does appear in that one, but very briefly. And in Trial of the Incredible Hulk, Karen Page is not there, but there is a Karen Page-like character named Krista Klein, who is actually a law partner with Matt Murdock in that movie. And she is she's kind of similar to Karen Page, although definitely not as annoying. And let me go ahead and get into this now. In the Visionaries book that I sent Regina for Christmas, a certain anti-hero that does appear in the Netflix series also appears briefly in that volume. Of course, you know him as Frank Castle, the Punisher. He does appear in that one. And to go into the Punisher's background a little bit, because I don't want to, this is about Daredevil, but the Punisher actually started off as a Spider-Man antagonist in issue 128, 129, somewhere in there. It was not long after the infamous Death of Gwen Stacy book. It was only a few months later. But at that point, he was not called Frank Castle. He was only called the Punisher. The Frank Castle name came later. And in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, when it comes to live action, the best interpretation of him prior to John Bernthal, I think John Bernthal is the best interpretation. But the best interpretation prior to him, and maybe I'm biased, is the Thomas Jane one. And I've seen all three Punisher films. But to me, it told the best story, and it really broke down who Frank Castle was. I mean, maybe we'll make a future video on the Punisher and maybe on the Netflix series, because we just started watching that series. So maybe we'll make a video in the future. But he does appear in the Daredevil series, and John Bernthal's interpretation of him is amazing. It's riveting. In fact, at times, Regina liked him better than Daredevil at times.
But I can't get into all of his so-called loves. Well, pretty much he only had three. He had Karen Page, he had Electra Nachios, and then of course Claire Temple, one of the night nurses. And honestly, Claire by far was maybe the best choice for Matt. She was the most grounded, but the thing is, even though she could help him, she would be damaged by him. Like, even though she could help him, she would be damaged by him in return. It would not be a good trade-off for them to stay together, because even though their chemistry was off the charts, the fact is that Claire, even though she helped him a lot and healed him and everything, he cared a lot about her. His mind and the things he did put her in so much danger, and it just wouldn't pay off. Karen was a bit off herself by her history, and especially her history being told in season 3. She was into that, but then also she was into loyalty too. She knew how far she needed to go, and she couldn't go back that route again. I mean, that's just my theory on that, but Karen was already off. Elektra actually fit Matt better because she was unapologetic with how she felt and what she did, and Matt just wanted justification for what he wanted to do, being Daredevil, because he was always talked down by Foggy. And then Karen, even though she was in love with Daredevil, she also wanted him to be grounded too. And they would always criticize him for putting himself in danger, but he wanted justification for what he was doing, so that's why he was so attracted to Elektra, even though Elektra herself was dangerous. So the love triangle-ish really did hook me as well, especially with me being a shipper. And even though Claire made sense, Claire would be more damaged by him. And of course it would make more sense for her to stay with Luke Cage, because even though Luke Cage was a big old a-hole, the fact is that he was a protector. He would look out for his people while Matt didn't. But that's just the shipping side of me talking. I'm not gonna lie, I love the Punisher. That's the only thing I liked about season 2. And I think it was towards the end of season 1. I can't remember. It's probably kind of merging together. But John Bernthal is a more realistic version of the Punisher. He's a more realistic version of Frank Castle. Even though in the movie, and you actually did send me the uncut version, I actually did see the theatrical cut, but I didn't finish it all. But the uncut version, in my opinion, is better. But I love Thomas Jane's version because I love how psychological it was. How he was playing with your head. It wasn't as violent as a Netflix series. Even though the violence didn't bother me that much, it was just the fact that I love how Frank Castle played with your head, because it kind of fit his background in the film. He was an FBI agent. He was a federal agent, so he was able to play in people's heads because he went undercover a lot as other people. And that character in that film fit how Frank Castle would interrogate people before he would just make them go nuts. Like, he would honestly find a way to have these people destroy themselves instead of him destroying them personally. Whilst in reverse for the Netflix series. And we're just now getting into it. Like, we're just now still in season 1. There's a few episodes in, maybe 2 or 3. But this version of Frank Castle is broken. He's hurting. And he wants revenge. And he will go out of his way to make sure that you lose an arm. An arm, a leg, a life, he don't care. But you can see how broken he is. Jon Bernthal did a really good job making him more human, as well as seeing the violent side of what would happen if you lose everything. And he also shows the audience that it's more dangerous for a person that loses everything than someone that loses nothing. And that's what I loved about Jon Bernthal's character. But yeah, maybe that could be a future video when we get both seasons done. Gonna lie, it took a while for it to pick up. Maybe episode 8 when it actually started to pick up. I really wasn't all that into it until it started getting further, like towards the middle of the series, and then it started feeling more rewarding, and I started really getting into it. Season 1 was an amazing introduction for all of the characters from start to finish. It really was good. Season 2, I did not like it at all. It just, a lot of things didn't make any sense. It seems like with season 1, they looked like they were trying to put Foggy and Karen together. And then all of a sudden, he went back to his ex. And somehow, Karen and Matt got together, which made no sense. And a lot of the characters themselves just changed just dramatically. I mean, not dramatically, but just drastically, like out of the blue. But I will say that I will applaud what season 3 did, is that they really did a good job with the Kingpin. And they kind of showed you how and why he became the Kingpin. I enjoyed him more as a villain than any villain I've seen in movies or in a series. But I will say this, he was incredibly vulnerable. Even though he was, you can probably say he's a megalomaniac, but the fact is, the guy was incredibly vulnerable. And especially when he saw Vanessa, and I guess I should have talked more about her. Vanessa was someone that I didn't really see that loved him. She looked like she was more into Matt than she was with the Kingpin, with Wilson Fisk. And Fisk did anything for her. He was pretty much simping for Vanessa. But you didn't really see the fact that Vanessa was a lot more dangerous than he was until season 3. I'm hoping if they actually do Born Again right, that they make her the next villain. She needs to be the next Queenpin. And I'm saying Queenpin because I'm sorry. She needs to come up with another name. A whole nother name instead of the Kingpin. She doesn't need to take that from him. Come up with a whole different name. You don't have to call it the Queenpin, but just come up with something that actually relates more to her. But anyway, it just showed how vulnerable he was, and he would pretty much go to the ends of the earth to protect her, even losing everything, especially when he lost it in. I will applaud that about season 3. But overall, season 3, towards the middle and the end, was done very well. Season 1 was a great introduction. Season 2, I didn't like. I didn't really enjoy it at all.
I have to agree on season 2. I don't get how some people love season 2, but loathe season 3 because they had to watch Defenders. Oh, wasn't that good? I'm like, season 2 was a mixed bag. Yeah, the Punisher stuff was good, but the stuff with Elektra, I was like, whatever. It was just boring. I mean, in all honesty, I think when they kept it organized, I think that's when you saw the best stuff. So I think you saw the best stuff of Daredevil whenever they kept things organized. So I'm like, I don't know where they get that season 2 was much better than season 3. I mean, to each their own. If they like it, cool, but I don't know where they get that from. Oh yeah, Daredevil fighting with himself was probably a bigger battle than him fighting the Kingpin or even Bullseye. But yeah, it was more of a fight with himself because, especially after everything he tried legally to take down Fisk kept failing, he wanted to kill him. But then at the moment that he could have, I guess Karen's words affected him more than he thought. And even Kingpin is egging him on to be like, come on, kill me. He yells out, no. And in his speech, I can't do it like Charlie Cox. But basically it is, God knows I want to. But you don't get to destroy who I am. You will go back to prison and you will spend the rest of your miserable little life in a cage, knowing you'll never have Vanessa. Knowing that this city rejected you, it beat you. I beat you.
That line was epic. That line, it just felt so satisfying. From the middle of season 3 on to the end, it just felt satisfying when he said that. I love the Kingpin as a villain, but I've never been more satisfied hearing him say that. I was like, yes, you've earned that, man. You've earned that. You've earned that, man. Oh, it was so satisfying when he said that. And I understand now why you repeat the line every time we watch it together.
Well, the real reason I repeat that line is because for me, personally, it's more than just cathartic for the character. For me, it's a cathartic line because, to me, it's so tempting to throw out everything that's good about you just for that moment of peace and revenge. But you have to ask yourself, is that moment worth it? Yeah, you'll have that moment of satisfaction, but then you have the rest of your life to figure out. There's so many times in my life where I just wanted to just throw it away and just cave in someone's face just because they were a jerk, for a lack of a better word. But then I have to ask myself, are they worth it? And I'm going to be a little R-rated for a second. I think I would rather look like a pussy for 5 minutes than look like a fool for the rest of my life. And I think that's the choice that Matt Murdock had to face. Look soft, look weak for a moment, or look like a fool for the rest of his life. That's why I love that line so much. And like I said, I can't do it like Charlie Cox. But that seed, that episode, ooh, you have to pretty much see the seed and hear it with it to really appreciate it. But anyway, for me, that's all I got to say on this series on the Netflix, now Disney Plus series of Daredevil. Yes, I can speak English. And thanks for letting me express about the other 2 live action versions of Daredevil as well.
And that is it for this walk down memory lane for this throwback review of Daredevil, the Netflix series. I want to thank Ervin for not only watching it with me, but also introducing me to a lot of things when it comes to Daredevil, which makes me even more intrigued and also made me love the Kingpin as a villain even more. I have fun doing this, and I'm definitely looking forward to finishing The Punisher with him. But I do want to hear what you guys think about Daredevil, the Netflix series, especially the fact that Born Again is going to be coming out in a few years. I want to hear what you guys thought. If y'all saw all 3 seasons, let me know what you think in the comments in the comment section below. Which season was your favorite? Who is your favorite character? I want to know. So leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.